Greetings, YouTube. Today we're taking a look at Under the Black Flag, the romance and reality of life amongst the pirates by David Cordingly. Um, Kind of interesting because I began to read this, and shortly after I began to read it, my wife showed a desire to see the series Our Flag Means Death, and we are in fact going to finish the first season this weekend. We'll probably begin the second season as well. And I knew about it. I mean, if you're on the internet, particularly if you're on Tumblr, you know about Our Flag Means Death. It's a sitcom that deals with a lot of the real world issues, satirizes them, as well as it's a very strong trans and gay positive narrative. So there you have it. But I was reading about real pirates while watching this show. Now, going into this, I was well aware of the murder and the rape. I was expecting the murder and the rape. The things that I didn't expect was the torture and the slavery. I always kind of thought because pirates were a democratic organization, literally they would vote to who would be the captain is. They would frequently vote what their destinations were. If they didn't like someone, they would vote to get them, out of their position of authority. It was a democratic organization. It's one of the few examples that probably these men ever experienced in their entire lives. And you'd think that that would kind of lend itself to wanting to not have anything to do with slavery. Nope. They did, in fact, keep slaves themselves. And they did, in fact, capture slaves as cargo and then sold them for profit. So they're horrible. But in addition, to make sure they got every single silver piece on board a vessel, they were more than willing to torture people. Sometimes they would do something as simple as invite and bring their captain over to the pirate ship and hold him hostage while they searched the vessel, and the crew knowing that if they didn't comply, the captain would be killed. Um, but sometimes that didn't work, and so they would actively torture people. Um, Not to mention, if there were women on board, they were going to be raped. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about that. They were criminals. They were not romantic. They were not Peter Pan. They were not the Hollywood pirates of Penzance. They were thugs, well, often drunkards. They were not nice people. Now, there were exceptions to this. There were pirates that did the least amount of damage possible. They would very often strip a ship of what they wanted, and then leave the crew their ship and to sail on their way. But in the process of taking what they wanted, they may have taken something like the doctor, the carpenter, the cooper. You might ask me about the cooper. At this time in the 17th and 18th century, almost all of your supplies were being uh, transported in barrels. So having someone who knew how to build and maintain barrels meant that you kept your water and your food fresh and safe to consume. So a cooper was actually a really damn important person to have, and it's not likely your average cooper was going to join the pirates because they had a valuable skill set. They didn't have to go be pirates. People that became pirates were disgruntled. These were people that didn't see a place for themselves within organized naval life, whether it's the actual military or the merchant seamen. They decided that they wanted to go out and do something else, or they just ran out of options because I aforementioned being a drunkard. I also find it fascinating because I knew they took cargo. Um, they took, like not just gold and jewels and things, which is going to be in small supply in most ships, but they also took like the cotton and the bales of cotton and tobacco and of course brandy and beer and things like that for their own consumption. I found that kind of interesting. I wasn't quite aware that level of commerce was that common. But also one thing I never thought about it, they took all of the supplies from the ships that you need to run a ship. So sails and tools. Because when you're a pirate, you just can't stop by Ace Hardware and pick things up at your leisure. You need to get this stuff wherever you can, and one of the best places to get it is the ships that you're stealing. And sometimes they would steal the ships. And again, if they were generous when they took someone's ship, they would drop them off on an island. Whether they could survive on that island was dependent upon the vagaries of the ocean and how nice the pirates in question were. Sometimes they were dropped on islands where they couldn't survive. Sometimes there were places that dropped on places they could survive, and they eventually were rescued. Um, and it was not uncommon for a pirate ship to be, like for example, the Ranger, and then you would find a better version, move the guns over, rename the new ship the Ranger, and get rid of that one, or rename it. Now it becomes a secondary vessel to your most small fleet. And most European uh, pirates never had huge fleets. That was not common. There was a Chinese pirate. It was a woman who actually had a really large fleet at one time. I forget her name. I'm not great with names. Never have been. Um, One of the things about Our Flag Means Death, and there's a few spoilers in here that made me smile, is that Blackbeard pretty much there was no proof he ever killed anybody. I mean, he died in battle, in a sword battle, which is cool. I mean, he wasn't a shrinking violet. It's just that his reputation was so fierce, people just threw their hands up and said, "Please don't kill me," which was beautiful marketing. He was a marketing genius. But in the show, he's a bloodthirsty killer. Whereas Steed Bonnet in the show is a simpering coward, whereas in real life he was found guilty of murdering 18 men. Not anything similar to how they are in the show. The show is delightful, by the way. Highly recommended. So yeah, this is a great book. It's disturbing. Don't go into it thinking there's going to be a lot of happy ending because there aren't. Uh, I also wasn't aware of the actual great age of piracy was so short. Essentially between like 1680 and 1725. That was it. That was the entire range. After that, it dropped off precipitously. I'm not saying it didn't disappear because it didn't. There are still pirates in the world, and they're still doing their thing. Some are just doing smash and grabs, essentially, coming on a board, taking what they can get and going, and some are taking an entire ship with the intent of selling the cargo, or ransoming the hostages that are on board. But I guess a lot of these pirates are still doing smash and grabs. They're just getting onto the ship, taking everything they can that isn't bolted down, and leaving out of desperation. In fact, I used to work with the guy who was at one time a Somali fisherman, and he got out of out of that job and came to America because he didn't want to get pressed into being a pirate. He was seriously and significantly in danger of that because he knew how to do his job on board a ship, and he didn't want that fate. So he and his family came to America, where he did quite well. He opened a halal butcher shop, two of them. Um, but yeah, it's a great book. It's depressing as hell, but it's still a great book if you're looking for something that will tell you a far more realistic version of what the pirate's life was really like. But if you want the fictional one and you want to be entertained, go and check out Our Flag Means Death.